Hey guys, welcome to Meet Edgar's July content batching party. It's a cool one because it's halfway through the year, guys. How awesome is that? So I am Megan. If we haven't met before, I'm the onboarding coach here at Meet Edgar. Dane, welcome. Hey, great to have you here. As you guys noticed, Charlotte as well, welcoming over in the chat section. I'd love for you guys just to introduce yourself. Let us know what industry you're in. If you guys have your social media handles and want to continue the discussion with each other, if you meet someone in the same industry, go ahead and share those. Make sure you connect with each other. It's always fun to get this small business community together and supporting each other. So content batching parties are something we do here at Meet Edgar in order to make sure that the time you're spending on social media is time well spent. So I'm going to go over just the concept of batching to begin with. Then I'm going to go over just some social media strategy, and then I'll get to kind of the product related questions. I know a lot of you pre-submitted some questions just about how Edgar works, how the tool works and stuff. So we'll go over that at the end. Cool. So if at any time you do have to leave early here and you have a question or something like that, let us know. Email support@meetedgar.com, or you can always pop into office hours at Meet Edgar. We run them every single day. I'll go ahead in the chat section here and pop this in as we're waiting for the last few people to trickle on in. So if you don't get your question answered today, please join office hours at some point. If you can't join the next if you can't wait to join the next content batching party, or of course, always email us. Cool. So welcome. So the concept of batching, first and foremost, if you didn't get the worksheet in the invite email, I'm just going to pop that in here now. And this worksheet is great because it goes over the concept of having math and that formula related to making sure that you're getting the right amount of content created during your batches. So some of the math that this goes over, and you can go ahead and do for your own business, is really identifying how many updates you want to send out a day and out a week, then making sure you walk back from that. So we talked a lot in the invite about having a formula for social media. And I think this is kind of the one thing that people should really focus on more, because social media becomes something oftentimes we hear people being like, oh my gosh, it's so hard to stay consistent. I don't know what to post, blah, blah, blah. And it takes out any of that guesswork when you can have this formula and you can base your social media strategy around categories and content creation at the right times. So this is the first thing we're going to go over today, is just this idea of grouping a like-minded task, as in creating social media status updates, and doing that all at the same time. It not only allows you to remember, hey, there's something that I can be able to get in the right frame of mind, have my brand voice show up in every single status update that I'm putting out there, but it also really makes sure that you're only having to create status updates either 12 times a year if you're batching monthly, or 52 times a year if you're batching weekly. And this really sounds a lot more enjoyable than having to create status updates every single day, right? I always love to suggest doing monthly batches, because how cool does that sound? Only having to do status updates 12 times a year. So this would be you maybe deciding, every single Friday afternoon, I'm going to go ahead and block off on my calendar 4 hours for content creation for social media. And here's how the math on that worksheet that you're looking at works. This is example math on there, so please go ahead and alter this for your posting schedule. Redo this if you're experimenting with a different schedule in the future. But this is kind of the formula that we like to suggest taking in order to use this batching time to load content into your Meet Edgar library. Once a month, once a week, whatever works for your schedule for batching. So it goes, I will send out X amount of updates a day, X days a week. So this is you deciding how many updates are you going to send out a day, and how many updates does that equal for a week. So if you want to send out 6 updates a day for 5 days a week, go ahead and fill that in on that worksheet there, or replace those numbers with what makes sense to you. Next, it's going to be you taking that out further. So how many updates a week is that to how many updates a month is that? With 6 status updates a day, 5 days a week, that's going to be 30 status updates a week, or 120 status updates a month. So you see how that's building upon it. So now we know we have to create 120 status updates every single month if we want to have fresh content. Now, you all know with Meet Edgar's evergreen schedule and strategy that you can set up these automation rules within Meet Edgar on your schedule, which we'll go over soon. But this is, again, just making sure as you're starting to fill up your library, you have an idea of how many status updates you need to create. Now you might be thinking, holy moly, Megan, 120 status updates, that's a whole lot. But this is the magic of how Meet Edgar's categories work. The categories make it so that you're able to pop on in there and say, okay, that means if I create 6 categories, so 6 different types of updates. Again, categories can be things like your blog posts, your videos, your how-to content, inspirational quotes, questions for engagement. Those all make up really great social media status update categories. So let's say you want to have 6 categories. You're now going to say, okay, with 6 categories, if I have 120 status updates I need to create, if you divide that number, that's you only having to put 20 status updates into each category. Now, this becomes a lot easier, right? That 20 status updates for each category means you have to go out there and say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and Google 20 questions to add in, or I'm going to go ahead and Google 20 inspirational quotes to add in and create that content, or I'm going to go ahead and write 20 different behind the scenes personal stories to share out. And again, this batching is going to save you so much time. So that's the concept of batching that we are going to hopefully all employ here. And I would love to know kind of if you batch already, what kind of cadence and schedule do you do that on? Are you a monthly batcher? Are you a weekly batcher? What kind of works for you? Share your ideas in the chat there. I'm super curious. But now we'll go over a little bit of social media strategy. Once a week on Mondays. I love that, Jordan. Get your week started out in a creative space. That's pretty nice. Cool. So now I'm going to just share some slides here and we're going to go over some social media strategy and then we'll pop into the app to look at some setup things. In the chat, keep the questions going. Maura is also on the chat. She works here at Meet Edgar. She's actually the face behind our social media handles for all those status updates you see. So she's a great wealth of information. So ask your questions there if you do have any. Cool. All right, so the concept of batching really is making sure that you're doing less and not feeling like you're on this content creation treadmill and continually having to pump out different pieces of content. So your goal here is not to always say more on social media. It's to work smarter. So one of our past webinars was actually named less work, more traffic. And that's kind of the goal I want you to have by automating your social media. If we feel overwhelmed, it's typically because we don't have the right systems and the right automations set up. So that's kind of the goal that I have for you guys getting out of this content bashing party here. So also in the chat, I'm curious to know, what do you currently feel or what do you currently believe about your content creation strategy? Do you feel like you're on that content creation treadmill? Do you feel like you don't know what to write? Do you feel like you don't know when to post? What are those kind of hard feelings that you have when it comes to what's not working in your social media strategy? Go ahead and let us know. I'm just always curious to know what's stopping people so we can just produce more content around that for you guys, like on our blog and in our emails and stuff. Cool. And one of the things that I think you really want to focus in on if you feel like your strategy isn't working and you're super frustrated on it is that there is a lot of noise out there on social media, right? There's a lot of people just posting for posting's sake. And I don't want you to be one of those people. I want you to be posting with a purpose. So posting with a purpose is really going to be a lot easier if you're batching your status updates because those categories can really help you guide your content creation strategy. So how do categories help you get your purpose out there? Well, it's by making sure you're sharing a variety of content. So these are just some example categories. Of course, you want them to match your brand, but if you're just getting started with Meet Edgar, if you open up your Edgar account and you go to your categories tab, you'll notice that you have some predetermined categories there, but you can click on those pencil icons on the categories and rename them to whatever makes sense. And how we're going to rotate through those categories we'll also go over here. But these are really great things to start thinking about is how you can actually start answering people's questions. So do you have like an inbox that people write a lot of questions into you all the time? Use that to guide your content creation strategy because it's likely if one person asks those questions, 10 more of your followers probably have them in their head and they're just not reaching out and asking. How-to and tutorials. People go onto social media for education. Remind yourself of that. We are in a society where we always love to optimize our time. We love to be learning. We love to be the first ones to know that information out there and to get a unique perspective. So go ahead and be that brand who shares a lot of educational material so that people love following your account. It's a great way to get your engagement up. Anything that you can think of like how to find the perfect mix of social media content would be something that Meet Edgar could do. Anything with how to in the title works really well, especially for evergreen content when it comes to sharing it on social media. Testimonials is a great category to add into Edgar, and that's because social proof is so important. When people are trying to decide if they'd like to purchase from a brand, a lot of the time, the thing that's going to move them over to actually make that purchase decision is to see if past people have gotten the results and gotten the outcomes that you promise. If you are promising certain outcomes and results, sure, it sounds good coming from your mouth, but how much more convincing is it coming from someone who's already done that? Now, if you're just starting out and you don't have any paid clients to do testimonials for, perhaps consider talking about how you went through your program or you've used your product that you're selling and how it's helped your life. Tell that personal story. Or perhaps you can do some content or perhaps you can do some work for free for someone in exchange for a testimonial. I feel really strongly about the fact that you need these testimonials as a category to get that social proof out there. Value and mission-based statements are really important. You want to make sure that the values you're putting out there and that the mission your company has is really visible on social media. People buy when we are aligned to values that we see the company put out there way more than we buy just on logic. So make sure you're taking advantage of this by sharing those values. Tips and outcomes, of course, we always want to move people to action. Remind yourself that there's enough content and enough noise out on social media that it's not more content people need to be consuming. It's what they're going to actually take as an action after they consume your content that truly does matter, right? So you want to make sure that you're giving them the ability to take an action step of what you put out there. Inspirational quotes are some of the most engaged with content, the most shared content out there. It doesn't have to be super hard to do this. I love just Googling inspirational stuff, finding really great kind of business quotes from people. You can look up in your industry, thought leadership, motivation, people in your industry, stuff like that, so that it resonates with your followers. And then personal stories. Why are they following you over someone else in your industry? It's because they connect with your personal stories. Don't be afraid to shoot some of these little selfies that you can do so easily and add a status update of a behind the scenes piece of content, stuff like that. So super exciting there. Cool. So social media really is all about staying top of mind for your followers. And you really do have permission not to feel like you have to sell in every single status update you're putting out there. I am giving you that permission. That one status update should have one job to do, really. You don't want to overcomplicate things. The more clear and the more defined that status update's job is, the better it's probably going to land. So really feel like these categories can help guide the content strategy that you're putting out there in a way that people are seeing like an inspirational quote. They're seeing your brand name on it. You've triggered their brand name. They liked it. You gave them a nice emotional feeling. That's okay if that's that piece of content's job to do. It doesn't have to do more than that. If you ask a question and someone answers it, that's great. You're staying top of mind because it showed up in their feed. You got that really great brand recognition. You don't have to have it lead traffic to your site, right? So remind yourself of that. It really goes back to this idea that it takes 7 to 14 touch points with a brand in order to get that purchase power going. And that top of mind is going to really be helpful with that. Take advantage of this, especially in stories, guys. Instagram stories, Facebook stories are a great way to share kind of that behind the scenes content of what's going on throughout your day. Telling people about it is a great way just to get that handle to show up and to stay top of mind so that when someone is ready to purchase from or need your product or service, that you are top of mind and they don't have to be thinking, oh my gosh, who sells something like that? Where do I want to buy that from? But that they remember you because you've added value to their day. So you do have to go ahead and remind yourself that every piece of content has a job to do, but you do not have permission to go ahead and know that your posts, you do not have permission to not know the job of what your post is going to do. So get really clear when you're batching about what you want each category to be for. So again, is it for engagement? Is it for inspiration? Is it for traffic driving to your blog? Is it to teach someone a tip that they can take action on? These are what the categories are there to remind you that every piece of content has a job to do. So as you're looking at your categories and as you're starting to think about these categories, I want you to list 3 goals for what each category can do for you, right? Have this really in mind. I know doing an extra step like this can sometimes be like, that doesn't really matter, but it's going to really help you when you're getting your batching done and going out there and creating this behind the scenes content post of telling a story to your followers about the mission of your company or something, reminding, hey, I don't have to go ahead and sell and put a link to my blog post in this post. Like, it's okay if I just share that, right? So remind yourself of the job of each and every category. And your goal should always be driven towards starting a conversation for your followers. If you have this mindset when you're batching that every single post should lead to engagement, should lead to starting a conversation, what you're basically doing is you are earning the right to sell. Now, you all know, based on how Team Edgar is set up with our category-based system of posting, we want you to get a really great mix of content. And something we like recommending is that 80-20 rule. So 80% of your content is super value adding. It's those how-tos, it's the inspiration, it's those tips. 20% can be a little bit more promotional. This is kind of the concept right here of why that is. It's because you have to earn the right to promote your stuff. You have to gain the trust of your followers that you're not just a used car salesman. No offense, used car salesman, but you know what I'm trying to get out there. But you really want to make sure that you're adding so much value that when one of your promotional posts shows up in their feed, they're grateful to see it and they're excited to purchase from you because you've primed them so much to know you are the right person to improve their life. When we look at selling as a way of improving our followers' lives, and we've gained their trust through our sharing of our company's values, through sharing our personality, through sharing, hey, we're a brand with humans behind it, working on a way of solving an important problem. We're here to inspire you. We're here to teach you. If you've got inspiration from us, if you have learned stuff from us and you want to go further with us, here's an opportunity to purchase and go further. Look how much easier that is to sell than just being like, okay, well, we're going to have to sell on every single status update. So remind yourself of that. Always go towards a value-driven conversation. I've used this metaphor before, but I think it's such a good one. It's just this idea of, if you're on a first date and you ask someone to marry you on the very first date, that's not going to go over very well. You're not going to get a yes. Same with social media. You want to make sure that you're having a conversation. You're learning about the people. You're asking questions. You're telling them about yourself before you ask for the sale or before you ask for the marry. You'll get that marriage if that ask is done like a year later rather than right then. Now, you don't have to wait a year on social media. Definitely be promoting yourself before that. But you see what I'm saying with that mix of content. Cool. So start simple as well. I always think, especially when we're starting out, trying to get our social media structured so that we can become more consistent, that we try to overcomplicate it because we're like, if we overcomplicate this and we show up in a way that no one else is, we're going to get more attention. Sometimes it's really cool to try new things, but let's keep it simple at the beginning as we're laying the foundation for our social media formulas. So first is, what kind of content are you best at creating? This is what we are going to refer to as your pillar content. Now, it's going to be different for everyone. Are you going to be someone who's really great at writing blog posts? If that's your main form, that's kind of the content you're creating. Are you a podcaster? Are you a videographer, a YouTube channel? You see, what type of content comes really naturally to you? And what type of content are you going to be creating? Now, you're going to always upcycle that content. So if you are someone who writes blog posts, of course, we always recommend doing things like whipping out your iPhone and doing a 2-minute video of explaining that blog post to use all of that hard research that you've done in that blog post and get more status updates out of it. But really think to yourself, what's my one pillar piece of content that I'm going to be writing? And then really think to yourself, how often are you going to create content? So this is that batching. And I want you to put this on your calendar. Take action for sure and block out time. I love the chat suggestions of doing it on Monday if that's where you feel most creative, or doing it on a Friday if that's where you feel most creative, or doing it once a month. But really protect that as sacred time. I think it kind of goes back to this idea that's in both of these books that I really love. One is called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and the other is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And they both talk about this idea of showing up as a professional in a creative space means showing up even if you feel like you don't want to. So if you have that time blocked off on your calendar every Monday for creative showing up and writing those status updates, and you look at it and you're like, I don't really feel creative today. No, you've put it on there and this is your creative time. Show up anyway and it will come to you. You know, it's not leaving these status updates to do at a time that inspiration is just going to strike. The professionals and the people out there who are showing up consistently, stick to this. It's definitely a formula and part science, of course, part showing off your own kind of personality and stuff and creativity as well. But really stick to that time that you do put on your calendar. And then decide what platforms you're going to use. So decide where you're going to be, what you're going to go ahead and create and get out there. And when I say decide what platforms you want to get out on, I always go with this idea that it takes a platform to grow a platform. So go to where your followers want to engage with you the most and don't feel like you have to show up everywhere. You know, here at Meet Edgar, we do find that showing up on Twitter gets us a ton of engagement. You know, we have a huge following there who loves to talk to us, who loves to tweet at us, and who loves to consume our content, right? LinkedIn, we still have a presence, but it's not somewhere where we get the same amount of engagement. So we're going to probably tailor a lot of our content for Twitter and then just amplify it out to LinkedIn as well. That's the beauty of using Meet Edgar, setting the permissions on your posts in order to get that one piece of content to go out to multiple accounts. But don't feel like you have to tailor each and every piece at the very beginning. Once you get the established following, you can always grow from there. So don't get too overwhelmed, for sure. And one of the ways that you can really make sure that the time you're spending on social media and what you're customizing when is spent well is knowing where your customers are coming from. And this just goes into making sure you're relationship building with them. If you don't know from like your Google Analytics, or if you don't know from anything like that, ask people. Go ahead and put out a poll on your Instagram story. Go ahead and DM some of your power users and ask like what network they found you on and stuff like that. So you can make sure the content you're producing is going to be really great. You know, each and every platform also has a different purpose, I think. And this idea that Instagram and like YouTube or something like that is really great for relationship building. You know, it's not going to be something that's going to be a traffic driver as much as say LinkedIn and Twitter. LinkedIn and Twitter, you're sharing blog posts, you're sharing links, you're getting people from the network to your site, which is always awesome. Instagram, you can put that link in your bio, but it's not going to drive as much traffic. And again, that's okay. You know, the job of Instagram then is to build relationships and to build engagement, to DM people, to chat with people. And using your networks differently in that way can be a really important part of your strategy too. So think about that, depending upon the type of content you're sharing, which network is really going to work best for you. So batching really is not complicated, but it can feel really overwhelming if you do not keep it simple and you don't have a formula. So if you haven't done that math yet, I'm going to really get on you right now to think about the categories you're creating. Remember, you can always change this. You can always create seasonal categories in Meet Edgar to act like mini campaigns so that when you're talking, you have that time significance in your status updates if you wanted to have like summer language in there, and we'll go over how to do that in a minute here. But remind yourself that you need to have that math situated of how many status updates you need to create each week, each month, in order to keep your feeds fresh that way. I also want to remind you that consistency on social media wins over everything. And this comes not only in your status updates, but also in your content creation. It really is better to slowly and steadily keep showing up than just to do it really hard for a week and then disappear. So this is what batching is great for as well. So for example, if you commit to making one blog post or one video a week, you're going to have 52 pieces of content by the end of the year. That's a lot of content. And that is going to be way better than if you blog every day for a week and you burn yourself out. Whoa, don't know why my slides just did that. So definitely make sure that you are really doing that. Sorry, guys, that was really weird. Here we are. And this is really cool too, because that one piece of content that we have on social media, or I'm sorry, on our blog or on our YouTube channel or something like that, can be upcycled then. You all know that to go and become really, really great and known in your industry for something, we need to be repeating the message over and over again. Our Facebook posts, our Twitter tweets aren't getting the reach that they used to with the amount of people are on the platform, with the algorithm changes that are happening. So the ability for you to write a really quality piece of content and then research that so well, and then make sure you get 5 to 10 status updates out of that one piece of content makes batching go a lot faster, and make sure that people are able to consume the content in the medium and the time that they want. So if you write a blog post, make sure that you're getting some text-only pull quotes from there to share for people who don't have time to go and consume the entire blog post. Make sure you put some on a beautiful background in Canva to share so that you get the eye-catching, eye color pop-in benefits of having that background. Make sure you go ahead and write a personal story about why you really loved writing that blog post so people can get a little behind the scenes content, but you can still share it. Do you see how beautiful that is, of being able to do one really well-researched piece of content a week, and then at the end of the year, you'll have 52 blog posts. However, those 52 blog posts can turn into like 500 status updates super easily. That is the beauty of having a formula of upcycling and batching your updates. But if you don't have this plan and you don't set up automation rules of how to share that content, you're gonna feel overwhelmed. So how are you going to remember at the end of the year of what you want to say to that blog post you wrote 8 months ago? So once you write a status, or once you write a blog post or record a podcast, make sure you have a system of how you're going to upcycle it. And automation rules can be accomplished on the Meet Edgar schedule to make sure that you're getting evergreen content out at a certain cadence, right? So what automation rules are saying, you know, I want to go ahead and share this blog post once a quarter. How you're going to do that in Meet Edgar is make sure you load up your blog post category with the appropriate amount of content that you want in there and place that category on your schedule. And I'll screen share and show this to you so that it makes a little more sense here. Before I do this, if my program here cuts off when I'm screen sharing, I apologize. I will be back in 10 seconds. Sometimes it likes doing that on me, and I appreciate your patience ahead of time. But what these automation rules are on the schedule here is when you're adding content to Edgar, you click to add new content here. You go ahead and you check off the accounts you want this to go out to. Remember, we always recommend amplifying your content out to as many places as possible. Then you're going to categorize it. So these are being pulled by the categories that you set up in this categories tab here. So if this is my blog post, I'm going to go ahead and write this blog post here. I'm going to save it to my library. The library in Edgar, essentially just a catalog of all your posts. Everything you add here will always remain in the library. How these are going to send out with automation rules is on this weekly repeating schedule. So this is you then coming here and putting like a blog post category on your schedule. Edgar works off of these in a last in, first out rotation. So he's going along here and he's going to hit this. The most recent post you added to that category will be the first post Edgar sends out. He'll then put it to the end of the line in the category and move along. Next time he hits that, he'll send the next update out, put it to the end of the line in the category and move along, and he'll work his way through all of the content within that category. Once he reaches the bottom and there's no new content, that's when he'll start from the top again. So this comes into play of knowing the ratio of how many posts you have in a category versus how many times it's on your schedule to know how often things are going to repeat. So let's say I've added 10 blog posts to this category and I put this category on my schedule once. I'll know it'll take approximately 10 weeks for Edgar to recycle through content. If I go ahead and put it on my schedule twice, I'll know it'll be 5 weeks before Edgar recycles through the content. So that's the automation rule you're going to set up there. And this is you batching every month, making sure that you're either creating new categories if you want things to repeat on social media more often, or loading up more posts into the same category if you don't want things to repeat as often. Cool. We made it through that screen share. What a treat. So those are the things you want to be thinking about there, is really making sure that you know what's evergreen content versus what's time-specific content. And we do have a way you can post time-specific content on Edgar as well. And that's going to be when you're doing the add new content section here. So when you click to add new content in Edgar here, you'll notice that you can go ahead and write your status update. Again, checking off the permissions, writing your status update, and then right next to the Save to Library button, there's this little drop-down menu. When you see Schedule, Send, and Save here, it's going to go ahead and pop up a day and time that you can come in and populate. So if this here is populated, Edgar will actually go ahead and hold this post until the day and time you put in here is reached, and then he'll go ahead and send it out to the accounts that are attached over here. If this is a post that you only want to send one time, you can always mark it as a use once post. So this is great for like holidays or like day specific discounts or something like that. Or if use once is not checked off, this will go to the end of the line in whatever category you've assigned it to, and it'll go back into the weekly repeating schedule. So if you're someone who just wants to send the same content out all the time, if you are someone who wants to send out a different piece of content all the time and not use the automation rules that the weekly repeating schedule does, you can use that schedule, send, and save all the time. But I would definitely start thinking to yourself, how can I be the most efficient at making sure that I'm setting up time slots on my schedule and I'm really getting out there in an evergreen fashion so that new followers always have the opportunity to see my content in the future. Cool. So themed monthly and holiday posts in Edgar are going to work in a way that I want to show you. And it's going to be you creating special categories for the seasons or for that kind of campaign that you want to be talking about and popping those categories on and off the schedule. This works really well because you can use like specific language. So, like things in the summertime, if you use that language for summertime posts, it's going to resonate more. Or if you're doing like, let's say you're like an insurance company and you want to go ahead and post something about like how to keep your car windshield clear in the winter time, and you only want that to go out in the winter time or something like that, but you don't want to do that schedule, send, and save feature, you can create campaigns within Meet Edgar and batch your content that way. So how you're going to do that is go on in to your categories tab here. When you go on into your categories tab, you can go ahead and click to add a new category. And you're going to go ahead and say, summertime blog posts or something. When you're loading your content into Meet Edgar, you're going to categorize the summertime post as a summertime, whatever you named it there. Again, check off the accounts you'd like it to go out to and write your post here. Then when you're doing that, actually, I forgot to mention, when you're making seasonal categories, make sure you uncheck this box right here that says include when selecting random content to post. And that's just because if you use a random time slot on the schedule, Edgar pulls from the categories regardless of what category it is to send out. So we don't want this if it's a seasonal category to send out if you have a random time slot on your schedule. Then just don't put that summertime category on your schedule yet. Once the month of when you want that content to send out, pop onto your schedule, go ahead and add that summertime category in as a time slot. Again, checking off the accounts you want it to send out to, selecting your summertime blog post category, saving it. Edgar will work in the last in, first out rotation. Once summertime is over, pop on in here, remove that category, and boom, Edgar will go ahead and not send those status updates out, but they'll still live in your library so you can use them the next season. Again, a really great way that you can set up these automation rules to go out during the season and make sure that you're using the language that's really going to resonate with your followers and what's going on in their lives. Cool. So the library in Meet Edgar is also a really great place to remind yourself of how doing creative and doing really quality social media status updates can actually help your entire marketing strategy, because you can do things like say, hey, this status update seemed to do really, really well. I want to now use this status update in my newsletter. I want to put like this quote in my newsletter or something like that because I saw it got a lot of engagement. You can just go into your Meet Edgar library, get a pull quote from it, and go ahead and put it into your newsletter. Remind yourself that you don't need to be on the content creation treadmill. You need to be really thinking about ways you can repurpose all of the content that you have. All right, so I want to go over an example here real quick. If you Dane, I'm not super sure what you're referring to. Sorry, I was just looking at the chat there. Can you say that again? Let me know what you're referring to when you say that again. Before I go into this, let me check here in the chat. Jordan, how do you get around posting blogs and advertising links on Instagram? I always struggle to find a way to get those links and drive traffic on Insta in an easy way. Cool. So I've got 2 suggestions here. One of them is, so you know the link in bio action, right? So what Jordan is referring to is the only clickable URL on Instagram is the one in your bio. So you can put a website in your bio at the top there and people can click on that. So a lot of the time, if you're a content creator and you're going ahead and wanting to drive traffic from Instagram, you'll notice people go ahead and share like a photo of their new blog post and say, if you want, with like a pull quote from it and say, if you want to know more, the link is in our bio. You then go to the person's bio and you can click on it there. Not a ton of people are probably going to go to your bio, just taking that extra step, thinking about if would you actually go to someone's bio, click there, drive traffic off. It's a lot kind of a more cumbersome thing than I think this strategy, which is to put it in your stories and ask people if they want the link. So if you go to your Instagram story and you say, hey, check out my new blog post, XYZ details are in it. Let me know if you want it. And then use that story feature of going like yes or no. That like little poll feature they have in Instagram stories. Whoever clicks yes on there, you'll go ahead and give them the link to your blog post in a DM. So this is a great way to get more engagement. And the Instagram algorithm is looking for that meaningful engagement, and DMs actually feed into the Instagram algorithm of saying, okay, this person likes to have a relationship with this brand on a pretty intimate level if they're DMing people, and you can go ahead and get that. So I love that strategy of just asking people if they want the link. Whoever wants the link, you could do this in your feed too, just in your blog post, put a few details of what they're going, in your Instagram caption, put a few details of what they're going to learn in the blog post and say, leave a smiley face emoji in the comments below if you want the link of where to go from this or something. And then you can just DM anyone the link because they'll be able to click from their DMs. We also have, let me go ahead and get this for you, Jordan. We also have this blog post here. Here we go. This blog post here goes over some of the strategies as well. So I would go ahead and check that out. And I'll put it in the chat in a minute here if Google would cooperate. There you go. So check that out for Instagram traffic driving strategies as well. Okay. So Dane, I was just referring to random content time slots on the schedule. So in your Meet Edgar account, when you're making time slots on the weekly repeating schedule as these automation rules, when I'm making these time slots, you'll notice one of the categories is random. So if I have a random time slot here, what actually happens is Edgar is going to choose a status update from the library, but regardless of the category. So we always, I love doing category specific time slots again, because it allows me to get a good mix of content. However, if I don't care what kind of status update goes out, I just want to stay consistent and get some status update out, I can just put a random time slot on there. If you're doing a seasonal category that you're popping on and off of the schedule, you're going to want, when you're creating the category, to make sure that this category is excluded if you're using a random time slot. You don't have to use random time slots on your schedule, but still just make sure you uncheck that just in case you do choose to use a random time slot in the future. Nothing from that category will be included or allowed to go out based on that random time slot. Good question there. Cool. Lynn, welcome. I'm so glad you were able to join here. So let's go over this fitness instructor example that I have here for you guys. So if you wanted to share content for this fitness instructor, let's look how easy it is to get a good variety of content going out here. On Monday, you could consider sharing a behind the scenes idea of, what you're looking forward to in your workout this week, you personally. This is a great way to engage and connect with your audience on sharing your own personal goals that might inspire them to also hop on board with that. So you're staying top of mind on something really relevant that they're probably doing on a Monday, right? They're probably setting their own goals. So thinking through what they're doing throughout their day and then having your status update show up so that it fits in with what they're doing. Tuesday, you could share behind the scenes content about how you go shopping for healthy food. Really great way to start out the week again by making sure you're giving people that value. Again, each of these posts has just been engaging in a way that you're trying to show up relevant in their life of what's going on, but you haven't sold anything. So it's okay. These pieces of content are doing their right job. Wednesday, you could share a blog post that you released, and you could get a CTA in there to visit your site. Click through on this blog post to read more. Good, you've got a traffic driving post, and that job was to do. Thursday, you could share an inspirational quote graphic. So again, if you're a fitness instructor, inspiring people with a motivational quote, really great thing to do there. Friday, you could get a text pull quote from within that blog, or you could share some sort of thought leadership for why you wrote that blog post, staying on that same theme. Do you see how easy that is? A week's worth of content showing up once a day in a great variety. You've got traffic drivers in there. You've got audience builders and engagers in there. So again, it doesn't have to be complicated. Every part of your day could truly be used for social media. Johanna, so Monday here was, what are you looking forward to in the week yourself? Talking to people about what goals you've set for your own workout. Stuff like that is really nice, again, because you're sharing your personal story that people will look up to you as a mentor in. You're inspiring them to perhaps set their goals for the week. So anything like this can be really adapted to any industry. On Saturday, you could share a video talking about your blog content. So again, maybe on the weekend, people have more time to watch video than they would during the week, but you still want to get the most out of that well-researched blog post that you wrote. So you're just going to whip out your iPhone, do a 5-minute video talking about the concepts in there, teaching people a little bit of how-to education, and share that. On Sunday, maybe people will be more willing to engage, so you're going to ask a question of your followers. A week's worth of social media content that you can promote, all based on this one blog post that you wrote, really. You don't have to come up with a lot. You're just telling people stories about your personal life to get that connection. You're inspiring people to action. Once you get someone to take an action with you once, it's much more likely they'll say yes to you in the future if you try to sell to them. And then reminding yourself that you can actually repeat a lot of this content, like that blog content could be repeated on an evergreen schedule based on the automation rules you set up in Meet Edgar. And then those more specific, like what I'm doing this Monday, could be used with that schedule, send, and save feature in Meet Edgar. Cool. And make this really easy. When you're doing things like producing your content, I always suggest putting a list at the top. If you're going to write a Google Drive document, go ahead and have a list at the very top of the document that tells, what category within Meet Edgar is this going to go into? What hashtags can I use to describe this? What are some caption ideas? What are some variations that I can add in order to describe this post in a different way? What questions can I ask my followers about this piece of content that they would reply to? What pull quotes are really great in this, and what images can I create in Canva to share with this? If you go ahead and have this in your document as you're creating it, think how easy it is going to be to transfer those into your Meet Edgar library and go ahead and have those sent out. So do the work as you're creating this in a way of reminding yourself you're going to share this multiple times. And really, if you're not staying consistent on producing content or sharing content, so much of the time it's because you don't know if that content is working. So here are just some ideas to have in mind as you're starting to produce status updates. Is this content for engagement? Is this content to drive traffic and increase my monthly website visitors? Is this piece of content a newsletter subscribing or an email list builder? This one is huge. We always want you to be thinking about ways you can collect emails off of social media. Because remember, not all of your social media followers are on your newsletter list, and not all of the people on your newsletter are on your social media. It's kind of the same with the idea of repurposing social media status updates in your newsletter and vice versa. Even if people are on both places, it's likely they're not seeing the status updates, all of your status updates, and it's likely they're not opening all of your emails unless they're super dedicated, which I actually hope all of yours are. But repurposing in the content that way is actually kind of respecting your followers and respecting your subscribers, being like, I'm producing this quality content and I want to make sure that you're getting it, even if you're not opening my emails, by having it also show up on social media. And it's saving you time. So look for ways you can repurpose that. Or is this piece of content for sales? So again, I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but this really makes batching so much easier if you know the why behind each piece of content and what it's supposed to do. So it has a purpose, and we're not just adding to the noise, but we're adding to the value. And you want to really think beyond your product or service as well. And this goes into the fact that, if you're just selling like dog toys, let's say, you don't want to just post about dog toys. You want to take a look at your followers as a whole human being, because secret, they are a whole human being. They have other interests that are kind of related to your main content. So if you're selling dog toys, could you also sell or could you post about like dog health tips? Could you post about training tips? Could you post about how to make your own dog food? All of this stuff would probably be of interest to people if they're interested in dog toys. So think about those other things that might raise your brand awareness and just be really helpful and value adding. And this is a great way to create a cohesive community on social media. And it goes into the idea that you want to be appealing to people's lifestyle and not just the need for that one product or that one service you sell. If you look at it this way, it's much more likely people will come back to you in the future to purchase from you. Because really, what happens once they purchase from you on social media? You want them to keep following you, right? So what is their incentive to keep following you? It's if you keep producing value-oriented content that's not necessarily trying to sell them the same product or service they've already purchased, right? So that's the really great way of being able to build a community who's going to spread that word of mouth marketing about how valuable your product or service is. You want people who you've already sold to remain as your social media followers and to remain as some of those brand advocates on your page who are going to show up and talk to you on your live streams, who are going to show up there and retweet your blog posts, who are going to show up and really take action on any tips that you're sharing, and then tell their friends about how valuable your community is. So really ask yourself, if someone's already purchased from me, how can I add value to their day with my social media content still? And you'll see your community and your engagement really increase. And that engagement is so important, as the algorithms are really weighing heavily on comments and shares rather than just likes these days on social media. So cool. And remember, last but not least here, every single piece of content is a relationship builder. Ask yourself, if you were someone reading this piece of content and asking, is this company, is this brand a good fit for me? Would that piece of content be leading me to a yes or a no? Either way is great. The extremes of getting someone to say, no, this company is not for me, is actually a good thing too. So no harm, no foul. You're just not going to be the right person for sell from. And that means you're going to be right for someone else. So make sure you're not trying to please everyone. Make sure you are having the conversation with your followers that they know if your product or service is right for them. All right, cool. So that's all of the strategy stuff. I would love to know from you guys what you want to learn from me, Edgar, whether you have strategy questions, batching questions, anything about the app. I can share my screen again and go over that. There's one other thing I like to share in these. I know a lot of you, this is your first content batching party. So I'm going to go ahead and share our slides, or not slides, sorry, our spreadsheets here that you can go ahead and use if you wanted to use our bulk uploader in Edgar, and I'll show you how that works. But as I get these ready, please let me know in the comments there what other questions you have. I can, again, go over anything in the app. We also have, if you are new to Edgar and you're just getting set up and you have questions about how Edgar works, this playlist here on YouTube is really great. It goes over every single section of Edgar in like a 2-minute video there. And like I said at the beginning, office hours are available every day at Edgar too. So I know these are a little more structured in the content batching parties. So if you just have a few questions, pop into office hours. Those are completely unstructured there. And they're typically groups of like 2 to 4 people in them. Cool. But this spreadsheet doc, so this is the second link I'm popping in there. That first YouTube link is just kind of getting me Edgar set up. That second link is a spreadsheet doc that's pre-populated with things like quotes, questions, just some relevant like business articles if you want to curate content for your followers. And I'll show you how these can be useful in Meet Edgar now. I'll share my screen here again. So this here is what I just shared. These little tabs right down here, you can see there's like quotes here, questions over here. So let's say you want to add in a bunch of questions, or let's say you want to add in a bunch of these engagement prompts because you want to get your social media engagement up. How you get these quickly into Meet Edgar is you're going to go ahead and export this as a CSV. So you're going to go File, you're going to go Download, you're going to go CSV, there we go, comma separated values. This will go ahead and download it. You can see it goes to my downloads here. I'm now going to pop into my Meet Edgar account, and I'm going to go to this Import tab. So before you do this, the way that this spreadsheet is set up, this first column is the status update. The second column is the category. Oh my goodness, Maura just reminded me my screen is not sharing. I am so sorry about that. Oh goodness, I don't know why I have so much trouble sharing this screen. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. So here's what we were doing here. I'm just going File, Download, comma separated values. So that's how you get this to download as a CSV file. The way that this is set up, column B here is the category within Edgar that you want this to go into. Column A here is going to be the status update. So I went ahead and downloaded this. Again, File, Download, CSV. I'm now going to come on in to my Meet Edgar account here and go to this Import tab. So this Import tab, this is another way of actually adding content to Edgar. So remember, you can add your content manually with this Add New Content button. This Import a Spreadsheet is what we're going to use there. So I can click Import File. I can scroll down. I can Choose File here. I'm going to just locate that. So this is the one that I downloaded today. That is not the one I downloaded today, actually. What is this called? There we go. Where did that save? Today. There it is. So this is the spreadsheet I just downloaded with the engagement prompts. I'm going to click Open. It's going to go ahead and load this, and I'm going to click Import. So as this imports into Meet Edgar, you'll notice all of these are now going to be status updates. So all I need to do now is go ahead and check off the account connections here. So again, these are just assigning the permissions, because whenever we add content, whether it's manually or with the Import tab, we need to make sure we have our permissions set. Scroll down and click to import the content to my library. And then I have all of these status updates already in my library. So that's really great if you're looking to get a bunch of status updates into Edgar all at once. Definitely go ahead and take advantage of that. You know, if you don't like what's on those pre-populated spreadsheets, obviously go make your own, Google your own icebreaker questions, stuff like that to get in there. The other thing within this Meet Edgar Import tab that's really great for setting up as automation rules is this RSS feed reader. So this is fantastic if you have a blog, but it's also fantastic for curating content from other people's blogs. So the reason that we would curate content on social media is to make sure that we're providing our followers the best information in our industry, regardless of where it's coming from. It's a great way to fill in any knowledge gaps that perhaps you don't have, because remember, it's way better to go deep into a subject area than it is to go wide. Yet perhaps your followers still want to know something about something related. You know, for example, here at Meet Edgar, we are pros at social media, but we contract out a lot of our SEO work. However, we know our small business owners and our content creators who are part of our Meet Edgar community could really benefit from knowing about SEO. So perhaps I could go out and look for some leading SEO bloggers who could teach my followers something, right? So again, it's really helpful, and it's going to be a really great way for you to collaborate with others in your industry also. So look at curating content as an awesome way to make sure your followers are getting the best information regardless of where it comes from. It's also just a great way to get more content out there without you having to create it, really. So here's how it works. You're going to put the URL in here, and you're going to click on Find RSS Feed. You're going to tell Edgar what category to place these in. So since this is from my blog, I'm going to just place these into my Meet Edgar blog category. I'm going to scroll down and tell Edgar which accounts these have permission to send to. Remember, anytime you add content, whether it's manually through the RSS feed or through the scheduler, you always assign permissions. And then I have two choices right here. I can either send these directly into my library, or I can send them to a pending content queue. So the difference here is Edgar will check any of these RSS feeds that you add to your Meet Edgar account every 24 hours. If a new post has been released within that time frame, Edgar will automatically pull it over either to your library or to your pending content queue, depending upon how you have that set up. So you can see here what Edgar pulls over. You can see the pending content queue is in your library with this little number over it, allowing you to see how many pieces of content have been brought over and are waiting for your approval. You can see what it brings over is the title as well as the URL. So from here, if I wanted to share this with my community, I need to approve it into my library. If I decide it's not going to be valuable, I can reject it. Or I can edit it, especially if it's from someone else's blog. I can edit it, excuse me, to add in some thought leadership about why I'm sharing it, to ask my followers questions about it and that kind of stuff. It's a great way to get that automation rule set. Those posts will go out depending upon when that category is placed on your schedule. So it's awesome for your own blog post just to come in right to the library in your blog post category. The next time that blog post category shows up on your schedule, Edgar will send that newest blog post out. Because remember, those time slots on the schedule are working in a last in, first out rotation. Cool. All right, let me see here. Don't know why. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Would you use the questions in IG story or create a status if using IG? So I would do either, Bonnie. Honestly, stories are some of the most engaged content these days. So I always suggest, if you're showing up in your stories, make it a way that people can always get to know you a little bit better, because it's some of the content that people aren't looking for perfection and a beautifully curated feed. They're looking for authenticity and a way of getting to know you. And they're wanting information and content that no one else is really seeing, right? It's ephemeral content that disappears within 24 hours. And people really crave that, to be honest, because it's their way of saying, hey, I'm following you and I'm getting content that people who aren't following you aren't seeing. So that is a way of saying, okay, great. You're going to kind of like, almost want to train. I know that's kind of a weird word to be saying it, but you almost want to like train your followers to want to consume your story content. So stuff like asking questions is really fun because people do like to talk back to you. Stuff like sharing, discounts only in your stories, once in a while is a great way to entice people to always want to look at your stories if you're offering them value that they can only find that discount code in your story or something like that. So definitely, if you haven't taken advantage of Instagram stories, do that now. I write my posts about 2 days in advance. When I add content, I want it to appear chronologically, but the second post comes before the first post. Okay, so Edgar works in a last in, first out order. So you always want to go ahead and add your content to the category in the reverse order that you want it to post. So that's the way you want to make sure that you're doing it if you're using the categories. Otherwise, you can always use that schedule, send, and save feature if you need it to go out on a specific day. Still learning about RSS feeds, but I seem to be running into issues when I try to import URLs. Okay, so if it's saying it's not, Sean, if you want to go ahead and email support@meetedgar.com, the specific URL Edgar's not able to find, we're happy to take a look. Typically what it is actually is that it doesn't have an RSS feed connected to it. This right here that I'm putting in the chat is Google's Feed Validator. So Google's Feed Validator will let you know if there's any errors on the RSS feed that need to be fixed before it can be read, or it will burn you a new feed that is readable. So go ahead and email support@meetedgar.com with the feed that's not working, and we're happy to take a look. The other thing that you can do is use our extension if the RSS feed doesn't work. So our extension here is going to allow you, so this is the feed burner that you can go ahead and just put your URL of the feed in here, and it'll tell you if it's got like any errors in it or anything. But let me go ahead and find a blog post here. One other way of actually adding content to Edgar is with our browser extension. And you can see in my toolbar in the upper right corner, I have this little Meet Edgar icon. So if I actually go ahead and click on this Meet Edgar icon, it's going to bring up the Add New Content screen right here. So this also is a super fast way to be able to click off what accounts this is going to go out to, categorize it, and save it to your library. So if you can't get a feed to work, I would definitely recommend downloading this extension so that you can quickly add curated content or blog posts right from the site. If you haven't had this extension yet, I will go ahead and put this in the chat. It's going to be right here. Go ahead and download it. It does make it through the whole thing this time. So there's the extension. If you guys want to go ahead and use the extension to add content that's not working with the RSS feed, I would definitely recommend downloading that to your browser there too. Awesome, Isabel. Thanks for joining, Lynn. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions, I'll scroll back here and see if I missed any of them as well. But let me know. I'll stay on for a few more minutes. Or like I said, go ahead and join office hours someday if you do have any specific questions we didn't go over there. Cool. Johanna, yes, I will put this up on YouTube and I'll go ahead and email you guys the replay afterwards for sure. I've been using the extension. I'll check feed burner. Okay, cool, Sean. Yeah, let me know. Email support if you can't get it to work out. Guys, as I said, make sure that you're really taking action on putting like the batching stuff together. If you do want like a full demo of Meet Edgar and you can't make it to office hours, all of the features of Meet Edgar are in that onboarding playlist, or we have like a continuous full demo right here if you want to watch it. I know a lot of you on this today are pretty new, which is super exciting, and learning new software does take a little bit of time. But if you really if you're just getting started, my biggest suggestion is to set your categories. Make sure you're batching at least 10 status updates into each category. Figure out your batching math for after that. But so you can get the most bang for your buck with Edgar right away, put at least 10 status updates into each category. Then put each category onto your schedule twice. And you have a fresh month's worth of content going out that way already. And that leaves you time to continue to batch more content and build up your library slowly. But Edgar will still be automating, building that consistency, and really having your followers get a good mix of content going out. And let me know, guys, too. Dane, that worry about posting too much is a fear I think a lot of people have. And I want to remind you that you see every single status update that you put out there, but your followers most definitely do not. The people who are winning on social media these days are those that are reminding themselves that, you know, the algorithm's reach isn't going to show your status update to everyone. And that's the true power of using categories to mix it up. So if you feel like you're sharing too much, it can be helpful to do like a blog post in the morning on Mondays and then put that category in the evening on Tuesdays, so that you're sharing this type of content for people who are consuming social media at different times, are getting a well-rounded view. And then Tuesday morning, maybe you're sharing like a question, and then Wednesday evening, you're sharing a question, and then Wednesday morning, you're sharing a video, and then Thursday evening, you're sharing a video. You see how doing those different categories is going to really allow people to see different types of content from you. One last thing that like really helps me with this is reminding myself of like TV commercials. If you see the same commercial on TV twice, you're usually not mad, especially if it's a funny one. And I think we can learn a lot from TV commercials, even though a lot of us don't watch them anymore with things like Netflix. But just this idea that, you know, the Super Bowl commercials that really stick with us are emotionally building commercials. You know, they make us laugh, they make us cry, they make us question things. And that's kind of what your social media status updates should do as well. And if you're producing them in a really quality way, people will be thankful that you're showing up in your feed. So don't make a big deal about feeling like you're posting too much. I will say, if you're not getting a lot of engagement on your posts, I would work on getting engagement before increasing the number of posts that you're putting out there, just because the way almost every single social media's algorithm is working these days is if it's seeing that you're not getting engagement, it's basically a signal to the algorithm saying, hey, this content isn't super exciting for people. And when we think about what the algorithm wants to do, it wants to make sure that your feed is filled with content that you love. So it'll say, hey, you know, no one's engaging, liking, commenting, sharing this. So let's not show it to a larger pool of people. But if that piece of content got a ton of likes and got a ton of comments on it, the algorithm is going to say, wait a minute, this piece of content is relevant to people and lots of people like seeing this. Let's open up this piece of content to more people in their community. So I would recommend really looking into making sure you have clear calls to action that invite people to talk back to your posts, that invite people to comment on it, or invite people to like it with having your emotions in there, or having a CTA to actually answer a question or something like that. And then start increasing your frequency. So that's another thing that you want to think about when you're thinking about like how often. Cool, guys. So let me know any feedback on this as well. You know, we're trying to I'm really trying to figure out kind of the best mix of making sure I get new content into these each and every month, because we do content batching parties every month, as well as making sure we're going over enough of the basics about what batching is versus how to use Meet Edgar and stuff. So if you have any kind of feedback, whether you'd come back to a batching party or whether if one was enough, let us know. support@meetedgar.com. Any other information that you're looking to learn, so that we can kind of make sure that we're optimizing these for what you guys are finding the most value out of. At the moment, I have 230 followers in Instagram, but only 18 see my stuff. How to get more? So hashtags are a great way. Instagram, again, is a really relationship building community. So if you're not someone who's going out there and offering value and engaging first, it's likely that people are probably not going to engage back with you. So go ahead and look at who your followers are and engage on their content. You know, go to your follower list on Instagram and start clicking on some of their handles and start commenting on their posts, start liking their posts, start adding value to the questions that they're asking. Start hanging out in hashtags that are relevant to the information they'd be hanging out on and joining in on the conversation to really, again, make sure that you're putting value out there first. You're doing that first step of engaging in that way. So I would say make sure that you're kind of doing that upfront engagement first. You know, I always like to go to hashtags and just kind of tap through, double tap like 10 photos a day on a relevant hashtag, comment on 10 photos a day, reply to people's comments on 10 photos a day, and you'll really see your engagement rate on Instagram increase quite a bit. When it comes to hashtag strategy, what I would really recommend doing is thinking about the groupings that you have. So what this is all about is, you know, the explore feature on Instagram moves really quickly for hashtags that have a ton of content on them. So things like, I don't know, dogs of Instagram, that gets like millions of posts posted to it a day, is a really one that if you post hashtag dogs of Instagram, your post is going to be moved down really quickly because a lot of people are doing that, right? But if you have hashtag groupings that aren't as active, your post will live longer. So you want to have a good mix of getting that immediate content, because all hashtags really are categorizing your content, right? So you want to get a good mix of having maybe 1 to 2 hashtags that have a huge audience so that you are showing up in a place where people are interacting a lot. You want to have 2 hashtags, let's say, with kind of a medium audience, and then 2 hashtags with like a very small audience, because that way if someone shows up in the explore feature in that very small audience, it's going to be likely that your post will live on for longer. So you see what I'm saying there. If you haven't kind of thought about the strategy of having hashtag groupings that have huge audiences versus small audiences and haven't played around with that, I would do that to make sure you're taking full advantage of it. Cool. And if you definitely want to go further on hashtags, this right here is awesome, written by Maura herself. This guide to hashtags here on our blog is really great. So I would go ahead and check that out as well. Cool, guys. Yeah, so let me know. Like I said, email support@meetedgar.com with any feedback. I'd love to hear what you want to learn from future content batching parties, stuff like that. And if you have any questions, come hang out with me in office hours. We run them nearly every day. And if you have any questions in the meantime, email support@meetedgar.com. It was super fun hanging out with you. You guys were super engaging. So it was a pleasure getting to know you guys all. And yeah, keep in touch. We love it. Thanks so much for joining today, guys.